Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this online capacity building program for teachers of higher education institutions in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. I'm sure that you all have been following us since the past 4 days, and this is the 5th day of the first week of the capacity building program. Now, as is the practice with all the programs in CSTD, we bring to you experts from different fields, and today's expert is an expert in the true sense of the term, Professor Vasuki. Professor Vasuki is a friend of the Ambedkar Open University. He has been with us for over a decade. Professor Vasuki encourages the CSTD to go for all the latest developments in the field of education technologies. We are very happy, we are very glad that Professor Vasuki has agreed to be the resource person for this particular training workshop also. Welcome, Professor Vasuki. Now, for the participants, I would like to give a brief introduction of Professor Vasuki. Now, most of you, I think, are already aware of Professor Vasuki and his expertise. But for those of you who are not well versed with him, I'll just give a brief introduction of Professor Vasuki. Professor Vasuki Belwadi is a leading communication expert in the country. He is professor at the Department of Communication and Director, E-Learning Center at the University of Hyderabad. He is also the Faculty Fellow, UNESCO Chair on Community Media. Professor Vasuki is well-known trainer in participatory video production, online education, and new education technologies. He provides training with an emphasis on multi-skilling and multitasking in various situations. Professor Vasuki is seriously working on instructional design. He is well-known video production training specialist with over 20 years of experience. He is also an expert in live broadcasting, radio production, with focus on adopting low-cost technologies for in-live broadcasting. He published several books, and his second edition, E-video production, published by Oxford, is considered as the Bible for communication students, prescribed by mass media and journalism departments in over 160 universities in India and abroad. He is closely associated with SEMCA for a certificate course. He also wrote lessons for the PG Diploma program in television production, University of Hyderabad, corporate communication and middle range theories for Karnataka State Open University, audio and mixing for IGNOU, New Delhi. And for the past 10 years, he is in the panel of expert trainers of CSTD of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. A very warm welcome to you, Professor. And now I throw the session open for the participants to interact with Professor Vasuki. Professor Vasuki, please.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir, for the kind introduction. I hope the afternoon post-lunch session will not be a hindrance to this session, and that you will be interacting with me as intensively as possible during this session. I encourage that you are interactive with me. My only request to all the participants is that whenever you have a question, please feel free to ask me to pause, ask the question, we will resolve it and then move forward. Kindly allow me to share my screen and we can begin. I may not be able to see all the participants when I start sharing my screen, but if you have any questions, please feel free to come on the audio and ask me the question. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Now, in the last 3-4 days, you have gone through the basics of blended learning, which basically means, like it says on the screen here, it's a mix of both classroom training and e-learning, where students get the basic concepts through material that is already available online, but are involved in activities in the classroom that helps them learn better. Now, in today's session, we will look at assessment in blended learning and teaching. In fact, most of the principles that I discuss here will be applicable even if your instruction is completely online or completely offline as well, or at least a majority of these principles will be useful to you when you're teaching online, offline, or in a blended mode. My session outline, we will cover 4 major topics. The first topic will be assessment types. The second topic will be criteria and rubrics. Third is how to go about fairly assessing students and how to provide feedback to students. You may not want to make any notes because I've shared the PDF of this presentation with the organizers. I'm hoping that they will be able to share it with you. So to interact with me as much as possible would be the best thing to do, perhaps. So let us start with the first section, the assessment types. But before we get into the assessment types, a brief word on the purpose of assessments. We've all learned about the Bloom's taxonomy and how a learner proceeds from remembering all the way up to creating. Now, this is my favorite part about e-learning because this is something that every teacher is involved in whether they teach foundation courses, fundamental courses, core courses, 101 courses, as we call them by different names in different places. And they proceed to learn more advanced courses. They learn to just remember, understand, apply, analyze, and evaluate. And the Bloom's taxonomy basically says that they have reached the highest level of learning when they achieve the level to create something on their own. And online, this becomes possible because of the interaction or the engagement that takes place between teachers and students, the instructor and the student, between students and students, and between student and learning objects. The interactivity, the engagement could happen between teacher and students in blended mode in a classroom or even online, between students and students in the classroom or even online, and between student and the learning objects that are available on the learning management system. Now, when this kind of an engagement takes place between teachers and students, the peers, that is students and students, and between the students and the learning objects, there is collective construction of knowledge, and therefore there is so much for the students to learn and also for the instructions to take away. Like I said earlier, there are different courses that require different levels of approach. And when you want students to just remember things, the basic concepts, the basic principles, etc., you are asking them to recall, show, spell, who was the Prime Minister of India, when was he elected, so on and so forth. And when you want them to understand concepts, You want them to talk about classifying plants and animals into different species. Look at which country has a written constitution, which country has an unwritten constitution, so on and so forth. You want them to rephrase what, for example, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said in his arguments when the Constituent Assembly was on. And then when you want them to apply the concepts, you want them to look at how written constitutions are amended in different countries. You want them to look at how to organize things, how to plan things, how to solve certain problems, how to utilize a certain principle to make sure that it can be applied in real life, and so on and so forth. Then at the next level, you want them to analyze stuff. So you want them to compare the macroeconomics of one country to the other, the financial systems that exist in one country and the other. You want them to examine how romantic literature flourished in the West and how it flourished in the East in different languages. So you want them to analyze stuff. You want them to look at what kind of common themes were discussed in literature. So you want them to basically analyze and come up with their understanding of the basic concepts. At the next level, you want them to evaluate things. This is a slightly advanced level. The analyze, evaluate, and create are slightly advanced level courses. So you may want them to watch a documentary and analyze it, or watch a film and analyze it, or look at how a certain class of or a certain set of chemicals react with another set of chemicals. So you want them to deduce, you want them to interpret, you want them to provide their opinion on certain things. You want them to rate a piece of literature, so on and so forth, which means that they have understood all the basic concepts and they are able to now analyze and also evaluate whether something is good or not. And at the next level, you want them to create. This is a slightly advanced stage where you may want them to make a film, or you want them to write a thesis, you want them to create a poster on a science topic. You want them to create budget estimates for the municipality, perhaps. I don't know. There could be any number of things that you want them to do based on information that is already available, which means that when they reach the level of creating, they have reached a stage where they can be independent on their own, be able to apply concepts, and they are now ready to work in the industry. And please remember, I'm using the word industry as a very, very generic term. It could include academics, it could include it could include banks, it could include any of the other sectors that we want. Now, why is assessment and feedback important? Most times, including me, most times we see that we do assess students on their assignments or on their tasks or exercises or whatever, but we rarely provide feedback. We correct, we strike out things, we circle things, and then we just give them grades or marks, whatever the system is. But the fundamental principle behind assessment is to get to know what our students are learning, how they are learning, and to what extent they are learning, and what is the quality of their learning. We want to know to what extent they have learned, what is the quality of their learning, and we also want to assist them in understanding how much they have learned. Now, for the first part, getting to know our students and the quality of their learning can be done through assessing their work. But if you have to assist them in understanding how much they have learned, one may have to provide feedback. But whenever we talk of assignments, or whenever we talk of examinations, these are the common terms that students are discussing. They immediately want to know, any mark like, sir, how many marks are you going to evaluate us on? What is going to be the deadline? And they're constantly worried about the assignment. There's a lot of stress and anxiety. They're worried that teachers are going to judge them based on the output that they give in the form of an assignment. Now, that happens again, like I said earlier, we assess students, but we often do not provide feedback. If we are providing feedback to the students, that is the best thing to do. But sometimes, or most times, we tend to forget to provide feedback to the students. It's important that when we are creating assessments, it's important that they must be aligned to the course outcomes. Now, all of us have heard about outcome-based education. We write out the outcome-based outcomes for each of the courses, wherein they are able to do things, wherein they are able to comprehend things, wherein they are able to create things. Therefore, all assessment must be aligned to the course outcomes. The second thing is that the assessment should be so developed that they can be achieved and also measured. That their performance in a particular assessment, one must be able to measure. If you give them an assignment, I'll just give an example from my discipline. If you ask them to create a video, you must be able to measure to what extent they have been able to do good camera work, to what extent they have been able to tell the story, in a smooth fashion, to what extent they have been able to edit their video to tell the story, to what extent they have been able to interview. So there are several parameters based on which one can measure an assignment, and therefore one needs to develop assessments that can, wherein the student's output can be measured. Now, it's also important for us to create assessments that are relevant and see if it goes beyond their academic achievements. Academic achievement is where they have been told that in order to be able to pass this course, you need to get 45 marks. So, or pass this course, minimum marks is 45. Therefore, a student does things that gets him 45 or 65 or 75 or whatever. But is the assessment going to be useful for them in the future? When they get out of the main gates of the university, will they be apply it on their jobs? Will they be able to apply it in their careers? Will they be able to apply it in their life? So the assessments that we give, depending on the level of the course, must some way reflect the real life world, or real life situations that they may face in the future. Now, providing feedback is important because it clarifies what good performance is, what are the goals of that project, of that assignment, what are the criteria based on which you are going to assess them, and what are the standards based on which you are going to assess a student. The most important thing about it is that it facilitates self-assessment and reflection in learning. Reflection in learning happens when teachers provide feedback to the students. although we teach every unit on a weekly basis, twice or thrice, we meet the students. We ask them to go through material that is online. They come back and we discuss things in a blended environment. We discuss things and we do things. We engage them in exercises or assignments that will help them actively learn the things that they have learned online. Feedback also provides high quality information to the students on specifics that they may have missed out on an assignment. And more importantly, it encourages a dialogue between the teachers and the students, and the students and the students themselves. Uh, Most often, uh, students tend to be a bit hesitant to talk to teachers, and providing feedback is one way of encouraging a dialogue with between the teachers and the students. Now, when a student has done well on an assignment, and when you provide them positive feedback, uh, it motivates them, and when their self-esteem grows, believe me, I have noticed it with my own students in the first semester when they did video production, small exercises, to the time they proceed to actually producing a documentary. Their progress, when you provide constructive feedback throughout the first to fourth semester, you know their motivation increases, their involvement in the project increases, uh, their self-esteem increases. Therefore, they are able to do a much better job in the final project in the fourth semester. uh, every course has a certain uh, goal, objectives, and certain outcomes. And therefore, feedback can also help in closing the gap between where the student stands right now, and what is it that the student needs to do in order to be called skilled in whatever particular area, whether it is research or whether it is in a lab or wherever. So feedback is something that is extremely important. Although assessment is important, feedback with the student is also extremely important. Uh, so there are three categories of assessment. Most of you would have done most of these things in your daily routine, in your colleges, in your universities, etc. The first one is a diagnostic assessment. In diagnostic assessments, you are trying to uh, assess a student before or very early in the teaching session. What are you doing to assess the student before the teaching session begins? You're trying to see if the student has certain basic skills, certain abilities, and whether they are able to solve minimum number of problems, etc., etc., so that they are able to take your course and proceed further from there. It's like the fitness tests that they do for IPS training. IPS training is very rigorous. It takes a long time, and before they get into the IPS training, somebody is testing them for their fitness. They're looking at whether this guy is able to run 5 kilometers, 7 kilometers without a pause. Whether he's physically fit to endure the long duration of the test. An example that we can relate to, because we are all in the mainstream university academia, an entrance exam is one way of a diagnostic assessment. An interview is a diagnostic assessment of whether a candidate is suitable for a particular program or not, and whether they will be able to study well through the program. So why do we conduct entrance tests or conduct interviews for PhD programs and things like that? Why do we try to formally assess a candidate before they enter into the program. We try to do that because it helps us, plan our teaching methods. And we also want to know at what level to begin teaching. Uh, if they are well versed with some of the concepts, uh, then you can perhaps pitch your teaching to a slightly higher level. But because we have certain constitutional obligations, we have university level obligations, where waiting list students may also get into the system. Some of them who get into the system a bit later may have to be taught slightly differently. So sometimes it helps, or many times it helps, to address the lowest common denominator in the class. Therefore, a diagnostic assessment of students is helpful when you are pitching your class or your teaching method, or planning your teaching method for the semester or for the course. The second type is the formative assessment. Most of us do it, have been doing it for semesters together, for years together. This is something that is done throughout the course. Uh, After the completion of every unit, we either ask them to do a quiz, or do a presentation, or give them a project to do, or whatever. And as we proceed through the semester, students are given different kinds of assessments, and as the semester progresses, the complexity of the assignment also increases. In our university, we call it the continuous assessment process. I'm sure you are following that in your institutions as well. The continuous assessment process provides immediate feedback to the student progress, because once the student completes an assignment and you provide feedback to the student knows where he or she is lagging, and they know how much to make up before they attempt the next assignment. Because, like I said, even within a semester and within a course, as we progress, when assignments are graded and they become more complex as we proceed within a course as well, students are able to comprehend better, understand it, work on an assignment, complete it. And if there are any drawbacks, teachers could also help them in overcoming those shortcomings. Because remember, we saw that the concepts in blended learning are learned are gone through by the students online, and when they come into the class, it gives a wonderful opportunity to the teacher to interact with students even on a one-to-one basis. So there could be non-graded exercises, and I'm bringing in this because assessment normally means that we are grading them. But if we are giving them exercises that are non-graded, and if you give them exercises that involve self-assessment, you can also help them tutor. You can also tutor the students into understanding concepts, into understanding how to solve problems, etc., before they move on to more complex assignments. The third kind of assignment is the summative assignment, which happens at the end of the course. We are all familiar with the year-end exam or the semester-end exam, where we either give them a written exam to do, or we ask them to do a review paper depending on the course and how advanced the course is. We ask them to do a review paper based on 3-4 books or papers, or we ask them to do a project, end semester project, which is quite big. Now, even if you're evaluating them through the semester, a summative assessment at the end of the semester or at the end of the year or shall we say at the end of the academic uh, calendar, provides you with an understanding of how effectively they have learned, and also very importantly how effectively you have been able to teach during the semester. So while there is formative assessment which continues throughout the semester, and there is summative assessment which comes towards the end of the semester or year, both of them are ways to assess student learning. They give us an opportunity to provide and receive feedback. You provide feedback on the assignments or the exercises they have done, worked on, and students are also able to provide feedback on why a certain explanation was not very clear to them. So as a teacher, you might look for better ways of explaining something. uh, and therefore, both formative and summative assessments provide a great opportunity for the teachers also to evaluate themselves on the effectiveness of their teaching in a class. Now, summative assessments towards the end of the semester, uh, to what extent have the students learned throughout the semester? Is it constructive? When you are creating summative assessments, you need to look at whether uh, the work that you give encompasses all that they have learned during the semester or the year. So does it foster motivation? Does it ask them to do things that they want to do? Does it promote understanding of goals and the criteria, goals of the course? See, this summative assessment is being given because this course has the following outcomes, and therefore doing this assignment will help you in covering all the basics that you learned in the 5 or 6 units that you did during the semester. And does it help learners to know how to improve? A summative assessment, please remember, is, since we are doing it semester by semester, it is also helping them to improve so that they can move on to the next semester even more complex stuff. Therefore, a summative assessment at the end of the semester might help for the students to improve upon themselves and proceed to the next semester. And does it develop the capacity for self-assessment? Does it tell the student, look, here is where I stand, and these are the shortcomings, and I need to overcome these shortcomings if I have to be able to attempt even more complex problems or projects? Uh, does it recognize all the academic achievements so far during the semester or the year? And more importantly, like I said earlier, does it go beyond academic achievements? Now, going beyond academic achievements simply means that while they are able to respond to the syllabus that they have, while they are able to, address the problems and the projects that you give them as per the syllabus, does it also help them to address problems when they get out of the university, real life problems in the industry? Will they be able to apply the principles, the concepts here in when they join Infosys, when they join Tata, when they join a research group? It's important that they are able to achieve more than mere academics, because the real life problems could be different from what we envisage in the classroom. So what are the other things to look out for when we are doing assessments? uh, Generally, irrespective of the discipline that we are involved in, academic writing, their communication skills, their writing skills, whether they are able to use lucid, concise language to be able to present their arguments and whether they are able to provide referencing and citation. Now, why I mention referencing and citation is because, as we all know, students tend to use the Control C, Control V very often. Okay, it's important to make them understand that referencing and citation is very, very important, and otherwise it would result in plagiarism. Okay, and plagiarism is not a great thing to do in academics or even otherwise at all. So it's important that they are taught referencing, citations, etc., and some basic numerical skills on presenting data, whatever data they are working with, whether you are a science student or a social science student or a literature student. They must be able to present data in a way that is digestible by others. Are they able to go beyond the prescribed textbooks and also read beyond and understand and imbibe new knowledge, so that they can apply the concepts that they have learned in the classroom to emerging situations in, for example, uh, all of us keep talking about how caste is a major factor in elections. New television channels keep talking about it all the time. Uh, the media keeps talking about it all the time. Politicians keep talking about it all the time. They, in fact, even say that we are confident of winning because the 1, 2, 3, 4 castes will stand behind us. But when the results go otherwise, one needs to be able to sit and analyze and provide a critique of why such assumptions went wrong. Okay, so not only the concepts that they learn in class in say, for example, political science, they must be able to apply their own understanding from more reading, from more observation, and they should be able to apply them in the context outside of their classroom. Therefore, academic skills is one important thing that is important when we create assessments. Besides applying knowledge and skills within and beyond the studies, it is also important that they learn how to solve problems. How can they challenge existing ideas? For example, is it does the job of a voter end with voting once in 5 years? Why can't he have a right to recall? What are the pros and cons of having a right to recall an elected representative? What are the pros and cons of not having the right to recall of a elected representative? So, challenging existing ideas, trying to create new ideas, these are things that universities can instill in students. And not just that, they have acquired some knowledge in the university at the postgraduate level or at the PhD level. Are they willing to share this knowledge in a working environment outside? Sharing knowledge is also important. Sharing knowledge effectively is also important, because it's not just you who can have that knowledge. Sharing knowledge also helps solve problems much more easier, rather than one person having to solve it. Therefore, if this person is trained, and if the person is assessed in a way where they are able to share knowledge, that will also be a great thing to do. Are they able to research things, get information from different sources, whether it is primary or secondary sources? Are they able to bring them together and make a cogent argument? Are they able to think critically, question, interpret different kinds of evidence that they get from different sources? Are they able to interpret the kind of evidence that they get and apply those research skills in different contexts? And when they go out and do research, what kind of research would they want to do that will have a greater impact on the community and the society? So asking them to do research, even at the postgraduate level, do research on things that can have an impact on the community and society, will train them to take on bigger challenges when they move out of the university. Therefore, research and critical thinking, if you're essentially, if uh, initially we are looking at academic skills, slowly, as the semester proceeds, we are looking at, or as the program proceeds, we are also looking at whether they can apply knowledge, question, challenging existing ideas, etc. And at some level, if they are able to also research and involve themselves in critical thinking besides sharing their knowledge, that would be a great thing for the students. And they will definitely be able to be successful. They will be successful when they move out of the university. These days, it is also important for us to teach them some digital literacy, some digital fluency, sourcing data or information from different digital platforms, using appropriate digital tools, providing information in a consumable manner, presenting data using different software. Are they able to analyze, say, for example, data that they have gotten from us from a field visit? Are they able to use software to analyze the data, whether it is qualitative data or quantitative data? Are they able to use software to analyze data and arrive at so that the interpretation of that data will help them arrive at certain conclusions? To what extent are they being ethical in their online presence and identity and things like that? Because these things are going to have a very, very far reaching ramifications as they move out of the university. Now here, earlier we talked about the three categories of assessments: diagnostic, formative, and summative. Here I would like to talk about the types of assessments. Written assessments, where you ask them to do a case study, examine a case study, or you ask them to do a research project, or you ask them to do a thesis, or do a self-assessment. You create a workbook, create a portfolio, and or even write a reflective journal on what they observed when they went to a mall. What was the behavior of the people who came to the mall? So they could write a reflective journal on their observations when you ask them to do an observational study. Oral assessments is when you ask them to do debate, or you ask them to make presentations, you ask them to interview people, you ask them to group together and make a presentation. So these kind of things. So there is one written assessment, there are oral assessments, and then there are performance, exhibition, demonstration based assessments, where you ask them to do something creative. Can you write a script about something? Depending on which discipline you are in, can you actually demonstrate how soaps are created? Can you simulate a working situation where three of the four employees in a department want to take leave because they have an emergency situation? And how does the work manager address this? So they could be looking at some kind of a simulation and try to address those issues. The other kind of assessments are where the student might come up with a combination of these earlier things that I said, or the student may even come up with something totally different. One has to be open to the kind of assessments that we want to conduct with students. Therefore, it's important that we contact, if we are not sure about what kind of assessment is best suited for a particular course, it is better to contact an instructional designer who will probably go through your course content and also offer what kind of assessments would be best suited for students to take when they move on from one to the other stage within the course, or even from one semester to the other. So what we will do here is we will pause here. If there are any questions, I'd like you to ask the questions before we take a very short break, and then we can move on to the next uh, section. Any questions, please? Okay, if there are no questions, I'd like to propose a 10-minute break, because I can fully understand that a post-afternoon session can be very difficult to sit. Maybe you want to grab a cup of tea or whatever, walk around, stretch your legs, and by the time this timer returns to 0, let's all get back to the desk. Is that okay? Organizers?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you.